Hello and welcome to the Max Revenue Show. I am your host, Trey Shields, back from vacation, and I am here with the Zen Master of Commercial Insurance, Micah Salas. Micah, how are you today?
I'm really good. I got to play golf for the first time in 4 months on a Saturday. Can't
Let's
can't beat
go.
that.
Can't
18
wait to
holes
hear
too.
how that can't wait to hear how that 96 went for you.
Yeah.
So 88.
Before we've got a special, let's go. 88, not bad. Women's tees.
No, that was with like 25-mile-per-hour wind gusts on the back 10 holes at
Wow.
least. Yeah, so I'll take it.
Very nice. We'll circle back to that. We've got a guest today with us, Mr. Houston Harris. Got a lot of interesting stuff. He and I have gone back and forth on LinkedIn, and ton of stuff I want to talk to him about and dig into. But before we do it, we got to shout out to Insurance X Date. Insurance X Date generate leads, win new biz. Insurance X Date is where new business begins. Industry relevant data delivered on a software platform built for sales, not research. Identify and engage with prospects in minutes. Keep track of your opportunities and get production done. Unless you have, lived under a rock or have never consumed any of our stuff, Insurance X Date, Micah lives and breathes and dies by it. Go check it out. If you're a PNC guy, it's all the X Date data in most states. If you're a EV guy, it's got the stuff you need over there as well. And can't recommend them enough. Go check them out. Free trial. Link in the show notes. All right, that's out of the way. Let's get into the good stuff. With Swingle Collins, we have Mr. Houston Harris. How are you today?
Man, everything's going well. I appreciate it. I can understand that windy golf, but it sure makes for some hard putts. I just glad to be here. How are you guys?
I'm doing well, man. Happy to talk with you.
Yeah.
This is gonna
Fresh
be
off
fun.
fresh off vacay.
Vacay. Anywhere fun?
Disney.
Wow.
That's not
Uh,
fun.
that's a coin toss as to whether that's fun.
Hey, 5 kids under 11 and a pregnant wife.
Wow.
Yeah, that's not. You
Wow.
need a vacation this week, man.
I was gonna say you may be getting some of that gold medal we won yesterday in hockey. That's a big feat.
Yep. So this is my off time. This is the easy stuff.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Awesome.
Houston, give us like your your origin story in less than 5 minutes. Where'd you come from? What'd you grow up doing? And then how'd you find the crazy commercial insurance space?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think everybody kind of gets into this field um, through happenstance. I think very few people wake up and say, I want to be in the commercial insurance business. But I grew up out in East Texas, a little town called Longview, about 130 miles east of Dallas. I grew up with, there were a bunch of like lawyers in my family, and my dad had a law firm and kind of grew up around the service business. He had a crazy profession. He was a small town guy, but he represented all these characters all across the country and bailed out a lot of people in the RTC. So I did enjoy the service business growing up and thought I would probably do that one day. It looked like a lot of work for uh, there was a lot of work to effort to pay in there somewhere. You were just kind of chained to your desk and billing hours. I was like, I'm probably not going to do that. And I remember asking my dad or my uncle one time, how much do you need to read to get into law school and be successful in law? And they, pointed to the law library and said all those books. So I'm probably out on that, although I did gain a love for reading later in life. But I grew up out in East Texas and then went to college and spent a lot of time in college and high school running around with a bunch of people and got to know quite a few people all over the state and started, went to college and got out and had a really good sized network. And I started looking around. I'm like, I need to, I think I can go sell eventually. I'm going to go sell. So I started networking, and for 6, 7 months, just nothing. I was living over in the village with a bunch of buddies, and I didn't get any opportunities. And then all of a sudden, I got an opportunity. Two opportunities came at once. One, my first job offer was with a company called Amoresco, who became Lend-Lease, and the second opportunity was with IBM in sales. And my theory was always that I could probably go sell. I knew IBM was going to teach me very well, but I didn't have a lot of experience with like finance and learning how, businesses operated. So I really wanted to go get into the, learning about businesses, seeing how businesses operate, and getting some travel in. And at Amoresco, what we did in the division I was in, we bought non-performing loans from banks. We went in and looked at these large portfolio of loans that were subperforming or non-performing, and we would go determine a price on what to pay at an auction or an agreed amount to a bank before, uh, when we made the bid. And I learned a ton in that job. I was there for about 3.5 years and learned a lot about finance, learned that I did not want to be sitting in due diligence rooms the rest of my life. And I learned from a lot of really smart people, but I also saw that it was really hard to get way ahead in a profession like that because you're working for a large corporation. It's hard to move the needle, and there's plenty of other smart people. So I did that for 3.5 years. Then a bunch of buddies of mine from Texas and TCU had this to work for this company where we're selling these thermojets, these widgets that would essentially, turn a 3D CAD file into like this wax out object. It was like 3D prototyping. It was 25 years ahead of the game. It's actually a heck of a technology now, but watching a bunch of fraternity guys go talk to engineers was something. So we essentially bankrupted that company. And during that period of time, I was like, I got to go find a career. I had a girlfriend who's now my wife, and I'd been messing around for all that time, and I was like, it's time to go get a career. And I had a buddy of mine growing up whose dad had a really successful commercial insurance business, and I'd always kind of admired that. And candidly, I looked around. My really smart friends were getting into private client, private equity. They were doing stuff with the yield curve, et cetera. And I knew that I probably, with commercial real estate, I knew that I probably wasn't going to compete with a lot of them. So I also had a theory that everything needed some insurance. So about that time, I got into the business. I got two offers, one from Swingle Collins and one from another company called TCT. At the time, Frank Swingle hadn't agreed to the perpetuation plan, and there were some loose ends there. So I went to this other firm that we ended up selling in about 2.5 years, and then now I've been at Swingle Collins for I think it's almost 23 years. We were, you know, 2.5, $3 million in revenue when I started, and now we're over 200 people and approaching 60 million. Not because of me, but it's been a fun ride. So I don't know if that summed it up. There's probably a lot of rambling, but that's my story.
It's a good story. I'm curious, man. What 20 years with every time I hear that, I'm always like, how does it? Because nowadays I feel like people change so often, right? What's been the biggest reason that you've been able to stay around 20 some years at one agency?
Man, it's got to be that ownership. No, I mean, I think and kudos to Frank and other shareholders. I joined with uh, two other guys that we have a similar ownership position, 22 years ago, and we've really just stuck to our core thesis, and that's to, remain independent, bring on good people, and block and tackle every day. So I think it's been really easy. It's been fun to watch us gain momentum and just compound out at 13 to 17% a year. And then when that gets a little slow, you know, we always figure out kind of the next big hurdle. And now we have a new president and CEO that joined us, you know, 15 months ago or so, named Dan Curtis, and he was a guy we'd been working on for a lot of years. He had big time experience growing one of Warren Buffett's portfolio companies, and he's like the king of culture. And to watch him come in and start to put some lift on the fundamentals that we've built over the years, it's exciting. And really, we're starting to see some great things happen. Good opportunities with talent, um, you know, good back office systems, and just a general push to do things better and on a bigger scale. So that's been fun. There's always something that's been there to keep it uh, kind of interesting. And then we'll get into what I'm doing with my individual team. That was another thing. So it's fun. The commercial insurance business is great, especially for people with ADD. It's something new every day. I mean, people always ask, "What's your day look like?" I'm like, man, it's all over the map. You know, I get up. I usually get up really early, and I usually have some structure in the early end of it. But after that, it could be just about anything and just about anywhere.
You said you were. I want to come back to your personal story in a minute, but I want to, while we're on it, tell me what's the end game, or what are you guys trying to build over there? You know, you're waiting. You bring on this new CEO, a big push for culture and growth and all that. Where are you guys trying to go with the whole thing?
Well, we're really uh, and I listened to your last guest. I think the young man in his 20s that was really remarkable. I don't think people know how potent he is with that long term mindset at that age, and I think that's really where we've been successful is we have a very very long term mindset to really to just continue to build on the fundamentals in the business and continue to grow. I mean, it's amazing. You know, I saw one of our competitors sold last week. I mean, just by maintaining, you know, independence and sticking to our core values, that has led to what I would say, you know, outsized growth. So there's no real plan. The plan is to continue to attract uh, better talent based on being just a fundamentally sound company with no real plans to do anything.
But before we hit record, you were talking about how much the talent has increased since you first got
You
started.
know,
Can you dive into that for a little bit? Just what you've seen over the years, whereas from the beginning it might have just been some guys hemming and hawing and throwing out quotes, and now the
yeah,
the complexity and the. I'd love to hear your take on that.
yeah. I think it's all about perspective, and the world's certainly changed since 20 years ago. With, I mean, certainly now with AI and social media and LinkedIn, but I remember being in rooms like I had a couple thought leaders. I did some CPCU stuff, and I'd go to some of those calls, and then I was very active for the first 15 years with our carriers. I was on a lot of agency um, councils for carriers and traveled around, and then there was I've always been fascinated with the business development side of our business. There was a guy named Michael Jan's Insurance Profit Systems 1,000 years ago, and you sit in these rooms and learn about niches and what people were doing, and there there were there's some talented people, but I fast forward today and I listen to y'all show and I read about certain agents and power brokers, and there's some people that really know what they're doing now. I feel like there's been a large shift to I've always I've always had this fear that like we've got this little genie in a bottle secret here and that it's going to be knocked off. But not knock on wood, it hadn't. But there really are, I think, some of these, and we've got a changing workforce, but I do think people have gotten wise to the fact that there's a lot of opportunities in our business if you can come and treat it with some work ethic, grit, and really understand and deliver a unique value proposition. So I think the secret's out on a little bit on that. And I've watched it in our office over the years. You kind of continue to get people that probably could have gotten into investment banking or private equity or, radical entrepreneurship, but now they're starting to get into the business because it really is the sky's the limit in our business. I tell people all the time, you could really build whatever kind of business inside the PNC space or our private client space or benefits that you want. There's so many angles, and without really having to take a giant capital risk per se, it's a really good way to make a living. Um, it's hard to beat.
I've been thinking lately, it'd be interesting if you had, like we had David on a couple weeks ago, he had that long-term vision. I think to a younger person like 22, go get into an industry like just say construction, go work for, a utility contractor for 3 years. And if you had that long-term mindset, hey, I'm just doing this for 3 years to get the industry, then I'm going to jump out to the insurance side. I think if you could add those two factors, because then you have like you can speak firsthand of what any industry is going through, but then also the insurance. I want to say it's super easy, but I feel like it's kind of like it's not overly complex, right? That's why
Yeah.
when people talk about being a risk architect and stuff, I always kind of chuckle a little bit because I'm like, no, I'm definitely not an engineer, an architect, but I mean, I get there's knowledge to it. It's complex. It's a lot of legal language, but yeah, that's one thing I've kind of been thinking about
Well, that
lately.
was. I mean, I'll say, you always talk about career advice, but I remember meeting a guy when I first came to Dallas 1,000 years ago. My mentor introduced me to him, and like the first thing you want to do when you get out of college is go freaking sell. Get you a Porsche with a bunch of cell phone antennas on it, move it up and down the toll road, and I was like sell, 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 and he's like, look, he goes, it's all practice till you're 35. He goes, your kid, you're gonna have kids, you're gonna get expensive, and it's the old marshmallow test, deferred gratification that Buffett talks about. And to watch that young man the other day being interviewed, he's like, I'm just trying to learn. I'm playing chess here. I'd like to go get 2 or 3 more jobs, and then I'm really gonna attack it. In fact, I'm going to be revenue neutral for a year. And I'm like, this guy's dangerous. But it's easy to preach it, but I always talk about that mindset, like learning. Yes, maybe go to Europe, maybe go get into a specialty trade contractor, maybe go do 5, 6, 7 things, and then bring that experience to the insurance business.
Yeah. Let me ask you, before this, it was interesting I was reading your LinkedIn profile, but it looked like you made a pretty big shift about 4 years ago, from, like you said, more traditional broker, right? Like, let's focus on marketing or we're the best, to more of a move of, I think you said, take zeros off your claims is kind of your tagline, and you kind of went to more of that approach. Explain or just share the reason for the shift, and then some of the challenges, maybe kind of shifting your approach a little bit on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think about 8 or 9 years ago, I really had an epiphany, and it was kind of like the question you asked, why have you stuck in there for 20 years or whatever? And I think every now and then you got to kind of shake it up and throw some different things at them. And really, one of my goals about 8 years ago was to like actually make a difference for your customer. Like, how can I go into these prospects and how can I give enough value to where I'm not just known as some insurance guy who's going to move them from, you know, James River to America First and save them a bunch of money. So I really started working on ways to move the needle, so to speak. And then it was really interesting. It was working. I was doing some great things. But I was reading one thing I've always tried to do, and I hadn't been doing it as much since COVID, but one thing I tell young people is, you can go back to the Brian Tracy books. If you can read an hour a day in your field, you'll leave your field within 5 years. I mean, the way that compounds. And so one day I'm reading during COVID, I'll never forget it. It's before we were in this house, and I was reading Power Brokers. And I probably read it. I probably haven't read it in 3 or 4 years, but the Power Brokers is the one that profiles like the top brokers every year. And I'm reading, and I get to the first paragraph and the second paragraph, and this guy, the words are literally just coming off the page. I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy is speaking my language. It's unbelievable. He's like, the problem in the insurance business is we're focused on all the wrong things. And he talked about this process he'd set up specifically for workers' comp. The guy named Steve Heinen, he started this process called P4, and he was at a firm at that time called, Pritchard and Jordan. Now it's SSP. But regardless, I called him right after I read the article, and I was like, man, we got to talk. And he's like, oh, I'm in a meeting. I'll call you back. And I think we played phone tag for a week. But eventually, we got in contact, and I bet I've talked to him, probably an average of 6 or 7 hours a week, every week since probably November of 2021. And he's been an incredible mentor. And so that was really my shift. And what I've got my team to focus on is, our agency was rated #1 amongst peers as the best practices, P&C agency in the country by Reagan. We're all, everybody on the call, we're technical and we have all those things. And, brokering the insurance is a huge value. That's where most of our clients fit in. And people always like, do you have niches? And I've had, I was very heavy in real estate, life sciences, technology firms for my career, and some specialty contractors. But my niche now has really become people risk management. I want to work with companies that want to get better and go from kind of a compliance safety culture to an integral safety culture where everybody in the organization is really striving to get better. Not only can I save a company a lot of money on their insurance if they'll follow my process, but I think we can do a lot more. We can add to the balance sheet and the income statement by, um, you know, look, can we lower turnover? Can we do some leadership training for the supervisors? That's the thing I found over the years, like trying to get this process better. And of course, with Steve's help, is like we've put a lot of policies and procedures in places in the right spots on accounts, but we were finding that didn't necessarily move the needle. And really the linchpin of all these organizations, especially if you get into more blue collar stuff, is the relationships the supervisors have with their employees. So how can you empower supervisors? Claim costs go up, over 300% on a workers' comp claim, for instance, if a supervisor has a poor relationship with their subordinate. And working with these organizations and figuring out where they need help and implementing policies, procedures, leadership training, and a host of these resources can actually make these companies a lot better over time and lower their risk spend. But I'm telling you, there's a huge correlation between a company's safety culture and their profitability. I think you can gain an unbelievable competitive advantage if you can focus on some of these metrics. I mean, the first case study that I ever learned was if you go back to Alcoa and read about what Paul O'Neill did there, he solely turned that company around just focusing on reducing, lost time accidents and severity. So that's been my mission. I plan on doing that from now until the day I retire, just going out and helping people in a different way, looking at their pre-hire, post-offer prevention and post-claims. And it's fun. I mean, in my opinion, it's been very rewarding. It's been great to watch the guys on my team. Their learning curve is flattening out because they're getting to see. To me, it's more almost about the why of what we're doing, and that starts to propel people closer to their goals.
You said team. Tell us about your team. What does it look like?
Yeah. So I've got an account manager and an accounts assistant that's on the service side, and then we borrow into claims a little bit. But I've got a guy that's been with me for roughly 3 years, and Blake is really instrumental in kind of the operations of our team. He's you know helping the day-to-day renewals. He's putting together all of our business pitches, and a really smart young man, and he's he keeps me invigorated every day to go do better. He's always pushing me. So he's really running a lot of the day-to-day stuff and coming up with what technologies we're going to use to implement live training or put together post-offer health questionnaires, uh, et cetera. And then I've got a guy who's been with us a little less time, Caden. He's really out knocking on the doors and building the relationships. And then we just kind of come together as a team and figure out what we're working on each and every week. But we're just getting started. I mean, our team will eventually, probably have a full-time claims person or really a dedicated claims person. And then we'll have someone that is going to be just dedicated to executing our stewardship plan. And that's our number one goal, is to go out every day and essentially try to give more energy than we take in, and execute this stewardship plan and look at it at the end of each year and say, we did these 4 things, and look at these outsized returns that we delivered because we were working proactively with their leadership team, their supervisors, and making sure that their employees, when they came on board, they understood what was going on, and then keeping out uh, predators from coming in the first place. So it's really fun over time to build up these stewardship reports and see how much you can. I think people forget and are just unaware or not curious enough how much impact you can have on our organization. I think, I mean, we have a big calling. I mean, think about what we do. People are counting on us to protect their greatest asset. I mean, the challenge in the commercial insurance world, there's a lot, but I mean, people in general are buying insurance for a landlord, lender, vendor, someone on the supply chain. I mean, we've been given the opportunity to come in there and uh, actually, protect the business from a compliance standpoint, but there's so much more to give. There's so much impact that you can have on these organizations and so much influence that I look at that as kind of my calling from here on out. It's like, how can I make you better today? And by the way, for every time, if I make you better, it's making me a lot better because I learn a heck of a lot more than I dispense on the advice side. So, and I know I've read your book, Mike. I mean, you know, taking that consultative approach. It's not about quoting their insurance. It's figuring out where they are, what are their 1, 3, 5 year goals, and how can we be an integral part of that, you know, as a gatekeeper of resources and a good steward of their relationship in the company.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to ask kind of just on a practical side of things when you made that transition, because there's probably people listening to this that maybe say, yeah, I need to get more consultative. I want to get to the next level, or maybe they're just kind of feeling stale or stagnant. And what you just said there, I think is pretty motivating, right? Like, hey, we have a real opportunity as not just a broker, but a consultant to really go in there and make a significant change to these companies and to stand out from competition. So what does that look like on the back end when you said, I want to start to think more consultatively, talk to clients about, hiring practices? Did that feel intimidating? How did you structure it? And then also, did you find it difficult to find clients to be receptive to that? I guess it's kind of a good filter, right? Because you're going to filter out the probably poor prospects when
Yeah.
you're taking this approach. So,
Yeah, I mean, I'd tell you, you know, again, credit to my mentor down at Atlanta. I mean, he's been doing it over 40 years and he's incredible. Um, his depth of knowledge, and it's almost too much. I mean, you can't believe the game that he's playing compared to most agents. I would say I call it build a bear. I mean, it's really slow. It takes a lot of time. It's a lot of trial and error. And the truth be told, you know, from a business development side, it's slow because I mean, if you look at even today's landscape, even as smart as the average insurance agent's probably gotten more astute with technology and I think some of the secrets out on the career, they're 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 still we've still trained our consumer to go shop for insurance and get the cheapest deal and yada yada yada. And you know, you walk into these doors, you get referred, and go, yeah, you know, we've been with Chubb 20 years. I just need someone to, you know, beat them by 10%, and we didn't have this claim paid. And it's like, now I can do any of that. That sounds fun, but really, where I'm going to add value is looking at first things first. Who are we letting in the company? You know, it's the 20-60-20 rule. 20% of the people you hire are going to be perfect. 20% are going to be pretty dangerous. They're gonna, you know, cause problems. And then there's this 60% of the people that are really on the fence. You know, let's focus our efforts on bringing in the right people and then working with these 60% to make sure that they fall on the good side of the fence and that they're actually here to help us grow the company and they're not going to cause us problems when claims come in. And then, you know, again, what are we doing before the claim? I mean, I always tell people you're hiring me like you would a personal injury attorney, except I'm on your side. I'm going to go through and do forensics. We're going to figure out what we can do to this company before you have a claim to mitigate that claim. I mean, we had a mutual client not long ago had a accident uh, out in the southeast, and you know they were, you know, fortunately in this case we trained our client. You know, there's a couple things you do on each line of coverage when you have a claim. An auto would be, you know, call your supervisor immediately. Part two, get your video camera out and record. And people would say, well, why do you do that? Well, in this case, person gets injured, they film the accident scene, and the lady's holding, you know, her shoulder area and, you know, saying that she's hurt and then she's kind of moving around and she's fine. And then later on, you know, 2 months later, we get a lawsuit that she's got a, you know, damaged hip. Well, the reserve on the claim was like, it was a demand for damages for like $1 million or $2 million. And regardless, we ended up settling a claim for $15,000. And the reason you can do that is because you're prepared to uh, drastically mitigate these claims before they happen. So I don't know if I directly answer your question, but it's back to the marshmallow test. It's hard to get people to have a long-term view, but I mean, let's cut to the chase. I mean, the insurance industry in some degrees is in a crisis. I mean, you look at Texas, you look at the autos. I mean, these settlements, there's probably nothing that's changed more in my career than the litigious environment we're in. I mean, I literally had claims that used to settle for 5 and 10 grand that are settling for 600,000 to multi-million dollars. So the business consumer, the affluent families that we protect, everybody has a target on their back. I mean, these lawsuits are insane. And our, until insurance agents understand that our goal is a win-win for everybody, we got to reduce these claims. If someone's entitled to a big settlement, they're entitled to a big settlement. But a lot of this is just noise. And, you know, 80% of the cost of a claim and the time in a claim fall on a client. I mean, the client's these adjusters are handling hundreds of files. And so these clients, it's like an insurance submission. They've got to stand out. I mean, did they get a post-offer health questionnaire? What's the employee like at work? What's going on? Are they, you know, was there, how do we keep these drug users out? I mean, the stats on the amount of long haul trucking and big fleet drivers using cocaine is staggering. So we've got to, as an industry, we've all got to work together to keep this thing civilized. And a lot of that happens before, getting an insurance quote. That has really nothing to do with anything. In fact, just getting a lower insurance quote really isn't helping anybody. What's helping people is, you know, getting everybody home. It's the why. Getting everybody home safe at night is what matters, and that's how we keep our industry, to me, in good stead. And not as much focus on the commodity, but about positioning these companies for long-term success.
Hey, let me pause real quick. I'm going to edit this part out. Can you just move your camera just a little bit? I think
Yeah.
something happened and the camera just got
Yeah, man.
little.
This setup I have at my house is just sad.
It's all
Just
good, man. No,
unbelievable.
no,
Yeah.
it was great to start with. It's just something happened and you hit the table and it just went boop just a little bit.
Yeah.
Micah, this is your bread and butter. I'm going to stay out of the way. You got the next couple of questions.
Okay. Yeah. So, well, what I'm curious about is what do you do when you get to, and this is more from a marketing mindset, right? Because we all meet those clients that are actually running pretty well. And it's like, hey, the question's like, is that by chance or by choice, right? And how do you get them if they've had, let's say they're doing 30, 40 million revenue, they've had maybe one claim over 3-4 years, it's a pretty good operation, but they met with you, right? So there's maybe some type of pain there. What are you doing to get them to see that, hey, I'm a better agent than the other guy, right? And here's why. When there's maybe no obvious pain, and I'm not saying just poking holes to poke holes. I'm saying like you think there's some pain there, but maybe it's not obvious. How do you get those people that have kind of gotten a little lucky, they haven't had a lot of claims, to see that it makes more sense to work with you and your team? What does that look like? Your process, I guess, when you go into an introduction or a first meeting like that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's where the magic happens. And I mean, in general in our industry, uh, there's a lot of inertia, right? People are going to assume their current person is doing a good enough job. I think, first of all, I'd rather work with a company that's, I'd rather make someone good to great than someone who is not willing to do anything and is going to stay at the C minus D level. So I do like working with those. Now, the challenge you have as you move through that line is, yeah, am I good by accident? Or, some people have convinced themselves that there's a reason that they're not having any claims, and they don't even have a fleet safety manual. So, I mean, and no driver training, no onboarding. So that can be tough too. But in general, I mean, what my process looks like is I just want to meet with your people and potentially, conduct some surveys and learn more about their operations and see how we can make them better. And, a lot of the focus, uh, if the focus doesn't move pretty quickly off the insurance, then in that case, there's really nothing that we can do. But if someone wants to go from good to great by looking at all of these things that would help us in the event that there's a bad day. I mean, it's a lot easier to go pick up a deal where they've had pain and they've had uncovered claims and all those things. But hopefully after visiting with them and doing a couple surveys and learning, you know, having us explain to them why a post offer health questionnaire is great, or what integrity testing can do for them, or what are the benefits of a 3-7-21 action plan after a claim. you know Hopefully that they see that there's a lot more out there. So I really try to talk about the things that I feel like we can do to give them a competitive advantage over just the insurance. And there's 1,000 different pain points. And to some people, not none of that matters. So like I've had the same supervisors. We've had no losses. We get high regards on our net promoter score. So maybe there's not that much to do, but I think uncovering layer by layer by layer all of these other opportunities there are to make your company better is really where I focus on.
The uh, probably year two in production, I was working on this dealership, and we had just been acquired by Marsh, and so we're hearing all about consultative selling, this, that, and the other. Hold on. Sorry, it was my phone ringing. We're hearing all about consultative selling, all that. So I'm like, I- I'm, I've already, they've already like not given me the business, but they've already pretty much let me in the door. And then all of a sudden I start spitting all this stuff about, what's your return to work look like, and what's this and what's that. And the guy stopped me and he goes, son, he said, if I did everything that you wanted me to do, I'd never be able to run my business.
Yeah.
And so I think with what you're saying, it's like you've got to find, like, this isn't for everybody. Like, this is a very particular person, and you've got to be able to read the room, and going into the, a shark mentality auto dealership, at least this particular guy, I was trying to fit a round peg in a square hole or whatever. It wasn't the right fit. So I just, for anybody
Yeah.
listening, make sure there has to be a message market match there, or else you're going to get what I got, which was just like, son, well,
Absolutely. And I think one thing that this is, I mean, the number one thing I try to do is at my age and my experience in business is like, I tell Blake and Caden this every day, like, how can I get you to where I am today in 5 years? And you hear numbers, people are doing that all the time. Like we waste, and my company was very, very small for many years, and I had to spend a lot of time with carriers, and carrier relationships are invaluable. But how can I get you to focus on this, 10% that really swings everything? Because a lot of times we just get caught chasing, the most precious asset you have is your time. So it really is. And I think one shortcut to that, and, you know, Scott Alice used to talk about this 15, 20 years ago, and he's probably ahead of his time, but you got to bring all the different stakeholders into the room. I mean, the owners are very important, but for a lot of what we're doing, it also has kind of an HR bend, and it's got it's got a CFO bend, and the owners, and really getting all these people together and talking about like where we're trying to go. And it shouldn't be a bunch of lip service. Again, the goal is to build up a body of stewardship. You're not gonna, I call them plays. We usually operate like 12 to 15 different plays. You're not going to run more than 2 or 3 plays in a year. I mean, maybe we focus on one thing in the pre-hire type stuff, and then maybe we focus on post claims. We've got a lot of lag time on these claims reporting. What do we need to do? Where are the pain point? And I think that's what a really good consultative broker, Micah, does, as you know, is, figuring out what this client or prospect has capacity for, and then what are we going to be able to execute over the next 1, 3, and 5 years, and picking those areas that really move the needle. That's the art of the deal. Not saying, everybody's got tons of resources. It's not a resource issue. It's how do we get these resources to match with what these, felt needs are.
And every client's going to be different. Like you said, it's not like you said, you have to have 12 plays in your toolbox or whatever, your playbook, but you don't deploy all 12 on every single client. And maybe for some clients, it's one play a year. And then obviously you got to handle the renewal. You got to handle the insurance stuff, in a consultative manner, but we're talking outside of that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, that was honestly one of the biggest reasons I left. I was with Marsh, like Trey, right? But there was a lot of clients in that lower mid-market space paying 100 to 300,000 that didn't need all the bells and whistles, but they needed that consultative relationship and time with an agent, but they didn't necessarily need all the whole 12 plays we're trying to throw at them in a proposal, which a lot of younger guys will do that, right? Like, this is all the resources we have. Here's everyone on our team. And it's like, dude, they just kind of want a relationship. They want someone who communicates well, handles claims, helps them out at that time. And then you got to pick your one that's why I kind of came up with a quarterly plan. It's like, for those guys, it's like, hey, after renew, let's pick one thing this year to focus on, right? Like one area, and then just hone in there. So I'm kind of glad you said that, because that, especially for younger guys, as you know, Houston, it's like, your process is awesome and great, but if you're a younger guy feeling that pressure, right, and you're trying to pitch people like kind of Trey did on all the fancy lingo, it can be kind of an uphill battle, so to speak, right? And it's like and then you have the pressure from your agency trying to get to a certain revenue mark, right, to pay the bills and to validate. So it's kind of that balance. But that's why it's so great that we have you on, because I think there is a lot of guys out there in that $1 million book range or whatever that want to get to that next level who don't feel that fulfillment. And I think what you're talking about, it relates to everybody, right? We should all take the consultative approach. It just looks a little differently, I think, at different stages of our career and book size. But I think this could be that way to get those guys out of that, just like, I just don't feel fulfilled. I have $1.5 million book. I'm, making great money. I don't feel fulfilled. Well, this is a way to do it. Make a bigger impact with your clients.
I think that's what my mentor out of Atlanta I talk about a lot is, if you look at these producers in general, and we have them that, I mean, I was there. I mean, you get to 700, you get to 1 million, you get to 1.5 million. And I mean, most people in our industry, because it's hard. I mean, I still don't know how people do this. The technology's gotten a lot better, and I used to waste a lot of time, but it's a 60 to 100 hour week I think, to build up not as much so anymore because of some of the technology stuff, but it's a grind. And I do think people are burned out. And I think that's a big deal. And I'll tell you, since I've really started focusing on how I can help these clients and prospects, and how we can build our process and system to be bigger and better, and and create these efficiencies for the clients. I mean, I don't even look like it as work. I mean, it's a blast. It's a mission, and that's really what I'm here to do. Is to it's a lot easier to be, however many decades into the business doing this to say that. But I mean, that's the advice I give young people is like, start playing chess early on. I mean, one of my biggest mistakes was I was just a grinder. I was up, I was trying to make 500 and 600 calls a week, running all these lists, go to breakfast, lunch, dinner, drinks, whatever. And I had this huge, wide universe of, contacts and relationships, but, I wasn't going deep on those relationships. And I always tell people to look, for super connectors. I mean, I could go back and in those, now you got to go find these people, but it always comes down to 4 or 5 relationships. I mean, one of my closest friends is a serial entrepreneur, and I could have solely built my book of business just off of his relationships. Just because and by the way, you do need to grind. You need to learn for that first 3, 5, 7 years, and the grind really never stops to some degree. Figure out where you're going, and that's why on your last guest I was so compelled because he's A, B, C, stringing all these um, dots together to really worry about where he is at 30, sitting back and learning, and yeah, which is crazy. But that to me, that's the real thing is figuring out where you're going, where you're taking these clients, and how can you capitalize on these contacts. And always do go back to that word because I read it years ago. But being a gatekeeper of resources, I mean, it may not be a risk management issue, it may not be an insurance issue, but man, if you've got a good accountant for them or a good lawyer who understands contracts, I mean, that's a huge value add. And I think this is also one of your shows. Like, one of my closest friends has a $34 million book. Well, he's not really an insurance guy. He knows how to move chess pieces. And
Jeez.
I'm
he's
gonna
not
need
that.
his name, sir.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know if you know, he'd be great on the show, but like he's in the insurance business, but he's not. He just he doesn't waste his time. He knew how to build a team, and it's just him on the commission pile. But and he knew his niche, and it just kind of exploded. But he's not going to talk to you about GL
Specifics.
exclusions and property exclusion, and you learn that. I mean, you start saying the people that have really big books of business, they're probably, a lot of them are technically sound. That was the other thing I was going to say is like there's this diminishing part of return. Like I spent the first 15 years way too focused on being an expert because, and I still, I mean, I like, you get into my niches, real estate or life sciences or, I mean, I can talk to you about, you know, um, all kind of things that are very technically grounded, but those are things that come up one of them may come up every 10 years. So I would tell people, yes, become an expert, spend that first 7 years to become the best in your field, but also uh, build those relationships and figure out how you can add more value than just knowing an ISO form or some proprietary form, because there's a lot of value to be added outside of that. And you look at these guys with these mega books and mega success. I mean, a lot of it just comes down to their relationships and the value that they add outside of just the piece. Because there's no offense, there's plenty of people with CPCUs that are, sitting over there chucking yard darts and talking to a box turtle.
Well, now with Gemini and Chat, I mean, the knowledge piece, yeah, it's still important, and that's not perfect, right? It'll get things wrong. I've tested it, but it's kind of like you said. I think it's kind of made it more important to be, uh, like you said, a gatekeeper of resources. Who can you refer clients to, and also, do you know their industry, and like you're doing with the hiring stuff, right? Some of that, and then insurance kind of becomes just how you get paid, I guess. It's not necessarily the center point of your conversation with a business owner because no one wants to talk about insurance anyways. So.
I have a question for you. A lot of our audience is in that maybe a million and under, and so they're still really pounding the pavement and trying to get through. A lot of new producers as well. So when you have these guys underneath you, how do you? And I guess this is marching orders for the audience too. What would you say is like your like what's your battle plan for prospecting? What do you tell your guys to do? Hey, let's like who do you go after? What revenue size? Like what does the outbound look like? Like how do you kind of coach them up? What do you steer them to? Or like what would you tell the audience to do?
I would say no one's beneath me. I grew up out there in those East Texas public school systems, but the guys on my team, you know, I tell people to kind of figure out like what kind of prospect they want to be in front of it, and what do they want their book to look like. I mean, do you want to that was one of my biggest problems. I mean, I bet when my book was 1,200,000, I bet I had an average account size. There's always the exception, but I mean, I had a lot of $7,000 to $15,000 revenue accounts. I mean, can you really take care of a customer if you're renewing something every 3 days? Especially when you get into a hard market. So I kind of go back to the Stephen Covey stuff again with the end in mind. Like, who do you want to be around when you're in a room? Do you want to be around uh, people who know a lot about the oil and gas business? If you do, you go after energy, or do you like in Dallas? It's a heavy real estate community. I mean, do you want to be around your current friend base, or do you want to keep that separate? And then how you go get them is you got to be where they are. I mean, I don't recommend what I did, but I always spent probably more money than I should have, and going on golf trips, or being at a country club, or being somewhere where my end business owner and referral source was. I mean, by the way, those were the people that I like being around, these specific type of uh profile. And so I was willing to spend more. I also, for some reason, I got into this weird uh infatuation with like reading the old great copywriters like Gary Halbert and Dan Kennedy. So I spent years and years and years like writing long form copy, direct mail. And while I was doing that, I was really, back then it was all the technical side, really honing in on what my unique value proposition was. I I I read The Ultimate Sales Machine. I don't know, Chet Holmes has recently since died, but he kept a Dream 100 list, and that's a great book. I mean, by the way, I think everybody should read that when they first get in the business. But you know, I really started going to where I was, instead of making 2,000 calls a month, I was trying to find that Dream 100, those 100 people that I really wanted, and staying in front of them more than just using a shotgun approach. So I don't think there's the one secret to networking and prospecting and all that is to do a lot of the work of a lot of it's in the research, doing that on the weekends, not during regular business hours, and being prepared and knowing clients. I mean, I remember in that top 100 list, I probably couldn't do it today, but like I could name pretty much everyone's kid. I had I remember their direct phone numbers. I mean, the first 15 clients that I got prospecting, I probably can still remember their their phone numbers because I was in touch with them so often. But that's the hard part. That's why people with you know someone made the joke the other day. My mom thought they mailed the SAT and math and verbal separate. I mean, that's why people like top producers get paid a lot of money. It's not easy getting in front of people, especially to talk to them about insurance. So you got to show up different. You got to show up a little funny. You got to show up entertaining, and you got to have something that gets their attention. And it goes back to the old adage of, people do business if they like you and uh, trust you and deem that you're smart. So there's no magic there, but it does take a lot of shoe leather. I just always go back to the point that I think I could go back and do this. I mean, knowing what I know now, I think I could go lick this in 5 or 6 years. What's taking me 22? Because I mean, at the end of the day, you need to get in front of, very well connected and influential people in the type of business that you're chasing.
Do you mind sharing with us your book and average account size?
No, I don't. I mean, my book is one of my main goals in production's been over the last 7 or 8 years is to really keep my um, client base smaller. So I'm giving away a ton of money, a ton of revenue. I really try to give back a lot more than I bring in. And I've gone to this team concept. So, I'm building up my team around me. My personal book, I think last month I was at like 2.4. Um, I had a couple of accounts that grew over 1 million last year in revenue, so that was good. But I average my books average to like 1.7 to that 2.4 mark. As a team, I really want to be at a $6 million book over the next 3.5 to 5 years. That's my goal, is to scale that up with systems. Average account size is probably in the 30s, and really looking to move that up into the 70s. And a lot of hundred stuff, a lot of self-funded type stuff. More and more captives. I really want to build a process that I think we're getting very close to where I've actually got the insurance carriers coming to me to create captive and self-funded programs because they know that my customers are going to be delivering a sub 50% loss ratio. And if the bad day happens, the bad day happens, but we're going to mitigate every single risk before a claim happens and after a claim happens to take those zeros off claims. So that's kind of my goal. But I don't know where my actual book would be if I just had retained it. I know that it was the average account size was way too low for 15 years.
Micah, you got anything?
Man, you've been great to talk to. I think we're kind of on the time here. The only last question I would ask is if someone's listening and they're like, hey, I want to maybe add some type of the process. Like you said, you called that guy that was in the power broker, and maybe he has a business that does this. But if someone's listening and they're like, hey, I want to implement something like this. I got $1 million book, want to kind of get more strategic. Is there a resource to kind of learn more about the pre-hire, post-hire, the claims side of things?
Yeah. Yeah, and this guy actually, he's with an agency and he's a consultant. He's pretty much locked up. He's been good to me, just as a mentor. But he's got a book called The Workers' Comp Playbook, and his name's Steve Heinen. So there's some gold in that. But yeah, there's tons of resources now. I mean, with this AI and everything, I mean, the opportunities that brokers have right now to provide their clients outsource value added services is incredible. I mean, it's almost infinity. That's one other thing I'd say is, yeah, I'd encourage people to go out there and study and learn about all these resources. I mean, you can make a fleet safe now, much safer, with the telematics and all those things. But really do appreciate what y'all are doing. It's always great to be with elite mindsets, and I think you are doing a great service for the industry, and that's my overall hope. Let's make this industry even better. It's been great to me, and I think we can really help these clients and prospects, or even other people's customers. We can make it better and get rid of some of this runaway jury type stuff, and actually make these personal injury attorneys, have to think before they go in and just settle with an insurance carrier for $10 million.
Amen.
Houston, you're the man. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
My biggest takeaway is mission driven over money driven. That's kind of what keeps coming up in my head.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for everything, man. You've been amazing, giving us a lot to chew on, and I know everybody listening just is going to take away a ton. So thanks so much.
Appreciate y'all.
Thanks,
Talk
Houston.
to you
Thank you,
soon.
brother.
Thanks
Adios,
a
man.
million. Bye.